explanation is much more preferable to me than using a label of a make-believe word.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem that I have with gaslighting, is that whenever you get Dr. Robin Stern to come in and say, gaslighting, according to my book, Gaslighting, what it is defined by psychologists like this. No, it's not. Gaslighting is literally the name of a play. It's something that you're writing a book about right now, and you're trying to turn it into a term. It is not a mental health diagnosis. It doesn't come from the DSM-5. And even if it did, even if it's like some subtle shade of gray of some other diagnosis that's actually in there, by the way, which it is not okay because it's a weaponized word. Gaslighting is not a phrase I hear used in sympathy. I don't hear anybody say, hey, my friend Bill, he's really got a bad case of gaslighting, and I'm worried for him.
He's in the hospital right now.
He's in the hospital. Yeah, I really encourage him to go see a therapist. People use this as a weapon. And it's bothersome to me because it's vague, it's all-encompassing, and we're seeing this modern McCarthyism that's happening, where in McCarthyist era, you just throw out the word communist. And you don't even know what that really means. You just kind of vaguely know it means sharing. And so anybody who's even a little bit talking about sharing, you just go, well, you're a communist. And they go, no, I'm not. No, crap. And that just ends the debate. It ends the conversation. So gaslighting is this unfortunate mega label that we're throwing on things. And I think it's a weaponized term that, A, has no mental health definition. There is no concurrent science on this. Even the stuff you read about in this NBC article is referencing somebody who literally wrote a book called Gaslighting. She can talk about it, but she's really describing all sorts of interrelational, intercommunication dysfunctions. And my master's is in marriage and family therapy. And I think that's one of the things that really bothers me about gaslighting is that article captures like 10 different ways that you can dysfunctionally communicate.
Right.
And it doesn't appreciate that there's an entire licensed discipline in mental health whose only job is to deal with dysfunctions in couple and family communications, power dynamics, logical fallacies, all this stuff. And to just reduce everything they do and just say, it's gaslighting. You're gaslighting me. So you're the problem. I'm a victim. You're the problem. That's bothersome to me. Because a marriage and family therapist hears that and goes, oh no, there's no such thing as gaslighting, but there's like all these systems that are wrong in this. Let's untangle those, right? But gaslighting is just this label you can throw at people. And in that way, it really bothers me because gaslighting, you remember like 10 years ago, Nick, it was the key phrase was like emotionally abusive. People would say, oh, she's emotionally abusive. He's emotionally abusive. And as a therapist, you hear that and you go, okay, what does that mean? And they're like, they just nod their head and go, you know what it means. You're a therapist. You get it. But he's emotionally abusive. Like that we're going to write that as a diagnosis in our chart. Like, yeah, emotionally abusive.
Or even what do you do with it once you have that?
Right.
If you don't have a clear, like in what ways? Because really what we're focusing on is we want to change behavior. Even communication we can say is a behavior.
Right.
So all of this is we want to address the communication. The things that are happening, I think you would agree, are real things.
Yeah. They're dysfunctional patterns of communication.
Right.
And I want to address the action of that.
Right. We have to operationally define
and
what it
is
exactly we're talking about.
The word gaslighting or the phrase emotionally abusive were both equally unhelpful to me as a therapist because they come to how you feel. They don't tell me what he or she is doing. They tell me how you feel. And even in that article, Nick, the end of it was, you might be gaslighted if you feel any of the following. If you question your reality, if you feel insecure, if you feel unhappy, if you feel like your mate gets in arguments with you that you didn't intend to have. That's no other mental health word works like that. There is no word that the definition, the criteria is how other people feel about you. That's not a thing. It always has to do with your stuff. So, and another thing that really bothers me about this, again, is even whenever you were going through the list of withholding was an example and blocking was an example of these things that they call gaslighting behaviors. If you look at that, Nick, that's just a list of logical fallacies. That's all that was. Like if you look up a list of logical fallacies, that's what you see in that. So we already have a phrase to describe what they're calling gaslighting. Gaslighting is essentially using logical fallacies against another human and being wrong and, but being confident about it. So another phrase for gaslighting could just be confidently wrong. And that's a normal thing in humanity. We don't have to diseaseify it with a word. And I think that word in my opinion, causes more heat than light. Because if you tell me my mate is gaslighting me, so you just use such a big label, you throw a book of words at that person that I don't even know what that means. It has to do with how he makes you feel or how she makes you feel or how your boss makes you feel. And I don't know how to address that. But it gives you a convenient excuse to wash your hands of all the other half of the communication cycle and just tell me the other person's emotionally abusive, the other person's gaslighting me, period. And that's hard for me because I think as a marriage and family therapist background, I think in systems. And a system is not one human, right? That's an individual. I think about the dynamic of how the relationship works. So it's possible that person A is speaking and communicating in dysfunctional, unhelpful ways. Fine. There's an entire field of mental health whose job it is to address and change that. But when we just say it's him, her, gaslighting, period, I read an article on NBC, that it really bothers me. I think it's cheap. I think it's disingenuous. I think it's McCarthyism. I think it's overly vague. It weaponizes a wannabe mental health word. I have a problem with it. So that's my rant.
So, okay. So I'm going to kind of poke the bear a little bit.
Oh, Jesus, don't do it.
Because one thing that kind of stuck out to me, and I want to get your take on this since you have way more experience working within the family and the systems dynamic, is that one of the issues that I have with it is the victimization of the individual. So like when I hear things like, as it talks about in this article, or I've heard other people when they refer to gaslighting as making someone think blank, making someone feel blank.
Right.
The issue I think I would have with that, and the way that just kind of rubs me the wrong way, is because it draws a clear line in the sand as I am the victim.
Right.
They are the perpetrator. And the reason why I feel like that is an obstacle, a big obstacle to overcome, is because then it puts the solution on the other side of that line.
Right.
So I am completely helpless. There's nothing I can do about this. That person needs to change their behavior.
Right.
And in a therapy session, like with you, if you're the therapist and you're dealing with a husband, wife, and one of them identifies as the victim and goes on one side and says, the problem is over there, go work with that person. How does that affect the dynamics of the
It's a non-starter.
Therapy?
It's a non-starter. And that's why gaslighting as a phrase is so unhelpful, is because it gives you that victim permission to sort of just lean back and use a shorthand term and blast it on the internet and get a whole bunch of likes and a whole bunch of comments, or people nod their heads or put up some stupid emoji or like, I get it. You know, like I've been gaslighted too. My ex did that to me and blah, blah, blah. And it's like this overly general label that excuses you from all culpability of the other half of the relationship and any dynamic that you have, known or unknown, in your communication, which aids the dysfunctional communication style. So you're right. Like two people are sitting on the couch and person A says, well, she's gaslighting me, man. So go ahead and therapize her. Shrink her, dude. Like, okay. Like, no, I'm going to let me learn how you communicate. Oh, well, he tries to use a decoy when I talk, he talks about Hillary's emails when I try to bring up the kitchen table mail that he leaves all over the place. Okay. That's a logical fallacy, right? We call that a red herring. That's not helpful to the dynamic. John, can you stay on topic? She wants to talk about the kitchen table. I want you to start the next sentence addressing the kitchen table. Go. Do not bring up Hillary. So that's what I'm doing now as a therapist, is I'm modeling and changing and altering the way you communicate and making new rules and being also an independent observer. Because you're right. Like, and that's part of what I think is true behind gaslighting. And again, I hate words that get weaponized, right? So I have beef with this word already. But there is truth behind the feeling.
Yes.
That feeling of powerlessness and that feeling of, am I going crazy? The other person so confidently asserts a reality or a fact or a preposition that I very confidently feel is not true, but because their confidence is bigger than mine, I'm questioning my reality, and it can feel like they are mind controlling me or manipulating me. And I can feel like a victim in that sense. The answer to that is to bring in a third-party observer to come in and not referee things, but be a grounding piece to try to understand what you're both trying to say. Because, Nick, 90% of the time that I've worked with couples, they are both trying to say something and it goes over the other person's head or is misinterpreted by the other person. Mm-hmm. Now, if you ask that other person what just happened, they could easily say, he's just gaslighting me. He's intentionally trying not to understand what I'm saying. Like, one of the things in here was not understanding what I'm saying. playing dumb, which, yeah, that can be a real pathology, playing dumb. But really, anytime somebody doesn't get what you're throwing down, they have an illness. You can say they're gaslighting you. They're intentionally, horribly trying with malice to hurt you. Like, no, as a therapist, I know that people are well-intentioned. They approach conversations desiring to have real resolution. And I often have to be the translator between those two sides and help them get to a place where they understand each other. But again, there's an entire field of psychotherapy that deals with this because we are so aware of it as a human problem. And to just encapsulate hundreds of thousands of years of human interrelational conflict into a word and then make it that person's problem is not okay for me. It doesn't work.
And you brought up a couple of really good points, which I want to emphasize, which is that we're not saying that this is all BS and don't all that. It's real,
yeah.
But the way that we talk about it, for me, that's the big issue, is the dialogue. The way we talk about this is very important because you can go completely the opposite direction, and this becomes very victimizing, and it moves us away from solving the actual problem.
And so even the article said that. Like at the end of the article, it says, if you feel like you're being gaslighted, you need to get away from that person and burn their phone and burn their number and key their car. And it was like, this is hard for me to read because, earlier I compared it to the phrase emotionally abusive. Back in the day when people would come in and say, I feel like they're emotionally abusive, we didn't discard that. We didn't go, that's not a real term, you're dumb. No, we said, hey, tell me why you feel that way. What is he doing that makes you feel that way? Well, he does X, Y, Z. Okay, good. Now I have stuff.
Now we focus on that.
Let's deal with that. John, do you realize that saying it this way is causing this much pain? Well, no, I don't intend that. I'm just trying to send this message. Okay, great. Now we're doing therapy, right? Now we're getting into the weeds and we're figuring out how to resystem this. But gaslighting is ineffective for me if you just come in and say it as a phrase. So, what Nick just said is absolutely true. We're not dismissing. I'm speak for only me. I'm not dismissing it. The feeling is real. Just like emotionally abused is a feeling that's real.
Right.
It's unhelpful to use that phrase to me because I need to learn what's causing it so I can see the system dynamic.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about this, motive and intent are very important. So like here's one paragraph that they have in the article, which I want to read because it kind of made me laugh. So it gives the example. A mother always disapproving of her daughter's decisions to the extent that the daughter questions decisions she suspects her mother would not agree with. The mother may or may not consciously want to control her daughter's every decision, but by being overly critical, she's doing so. So
wow.
So this is the part that didn't make sense to me is what is the mother's motive? I mean, if she's a mom and she's got a teenage daughter and her daughter is now questioning decisions she's making based off of whether or not her mother would agree or not.
Yeah.
That's parenting.
Yeah, right. You're right.
That's gaslighting. Is that not a good thing? Because as a teenager, that was very important for my developmental.
Right.
My development was when I make a decision, I think, no, oh, wait, before I do this,
what are my parents thinking?
How are my parents going to react to what I'm doing?
Yeah, that's so funny. When I was a kid, do you remember when we were kids, earrings were kind of a hip thing for dudes for a while? Thank you, Will Smith. He's like the thing that made that happen. So I wanted to get one.
I had a magnetic one.
Did you? Yeah. So that's what I did. Here's the story. So I'd just gotten out of high school and I was like 18 or whatever, and I wanted to get a lip ring actually. And so, because I was into punk and stuff, right? So I'm going to do it. I'm getting brave for it. But I go to Claire's and I buy one of those clip-on earrings, just like a little silver hoop. And so I put it on my lip and I go to dinner with my parents that night. And they're like, what is that? And I'm like, I got a lip ring. I think it looks nice, but, you guys are free to say whatever you think. And so we get through dinner, and they're like, and they're like, well, okay, live a little. I guess it's, not permanent, and all right, it actually looks okay, like I guess this is okay. And then I pull it out and I'm like, it's fake, but thank you, because now I'm going to go get a real one. Like, now that I know you guys are cool with it and you didn't disown me, I'm going to go get a real one. Then that night I went and got a real one because I tested it and it worked. So I beta tested my idea.
Always the scientist.
Right. So, but it's a good point. So if you're out there and you feel like you're in a dysfunctional relationship, whether that's a romantic one, a parenting one, a family one, a business one, and you feel that somebody else is dominant of you and overpowered in the relationship and causes you to feel insignificant and questioning of your own reality, that to me, I want to address that, not just call it gaslighting and write it off and say poor us. I want to specifically zoom in to the stuff that you're seeing, and I want to address that individually, plank by plank, rather than just wrapping it all up in a big bow and saying, this is called gaslighting, get away from this person, they're abusive. That kind of terminology I think is unhelpful. I think it pushes too far away